I want to thank Stanford for this opportunity to present this educational program. My name is Inga Houston. I am President and CEO of the Dublin Chamber of Commerce. And this is a program that all 5 chambers in the Tri-Valley Chamber Alliance promote. We are Danville, San Ramon, Dublin, Pleasanton, and Livermore chambers. And hopefully they'll be in soon, although I know Livermore is having their luncheon today with the congressman, so he won't be here. They won't be here. So thank you, Stanford, for being here and sharing this vital information. We will be pushing this out onto YouTube for our members to tune in later if they want to repeat listen, or those who couldn't make it today. And they want the information. So let's see, I am going to start out with introducing Dr. Chang. He is almost an East Bay native. He grew up here in the Walnut Creek area. He is the medical director of occupational health services at Stanford HealthCare Tri-Valley. He is a board certified in occupational medicine and brings more than 25 years of experience in the field. Dr. Chan has a wide range of experience that includes both clinical and administrative leadership duties. His expertise includes occupational medicine and workers' compensation case management, injury care, disability management, medical case management, and utilization review, along with employee health and wellness. We are thrilled to have Dr. Chang here to present information about Assembly Bill 2188, which revolves around tests, I assume, that you can do when you're hiring employees based on cannabis use. So take it away, Dr. Chang, and I think you're able to share we already practiced with sharing your screen, so carry on when you're ready.
Okay, are you able to see it?
Yes.
Great, thank you so much for having us. We're really happy to be here and share with you the new AB 2188 regulation. I've been here at Stanford Tri-Valley now for about 8 years. Prior to that, I was in private occupational medicine practice in Concord and Walnut Creek for about 20 years. So I've really just been in this area for the majority of my career. Trained in California, so yeah, I really don't know anything other than California occupational medicine. I am joined by Anita Pedigara. I'll let her introduce herself.
Hello, thank you. My name is Anita Pedigara, and I'm the manager of occupational health and employee health here at Stanford Tri-Valley. I've been with the department probably since the beginning, about 27 years, and it's a pleasure to be here today to talk to you about this regulation.
We'll go ahead and just jump right in. If you have questions as we go along, you can go ahead and put it in the chat. We'll try to address those. Otherwise, we're happy to answer questions at the end as well. Just a little background regarding marijuana and California law. California has really been at the, I guess, forefront of marijuana legalization across the nation. In 1996, Prop 215 gave seriously ill Californians the right to obtain and use medical marijuana if recommended by a physician. And it was the first state-level marijuana law in the US and has since obviously paved the way for other states to pass similar laws. Then in 2003, Senate Bill 420 was passed, which meant to clarify the certain aspects of Prop 215. Specifically, it established marijuana identification cards and set limits on the amount of marijuana that one could possess and grow or cultivate. In 2016, Prop 64 was passed, and this now made it legal for recreational marijuana use for adults 21 and over. This significantly expanded access to marijuana in California, and since then has created a whole brand new industry. Then in 2018, legal sale of recreational marijuana use started in California, and since then the market has just grown tremendously. So in September 18, 2022, California passed Assembly Bill 2188. This became effective in January 1st of this year. Essentially, what this did was prohibit employers from discriminating against employees from off-the-job use of marijuana, whether it be for recreational use or whether for medical use. It shifted the focus from recreational use or marijuana use in general to focusing on impairment and whether marijuana was impacting the ability of that employee to do work. It, however, preserved the right of the employer to not permit any employees from possessing, to be impaired by, or having marijuana on the job site. And it allowed them to essentially maintain a drug-free workplace. There are certain exceptions to 2188, and mostly this is around safety-sensitive positions and federal positions that require or mandate certain drug testing. Marijuana is still considered a Schedule I drug by the federal government, and is therefore still illegal in all forms for certain federal jobs and contracts. So certain laws may allow the testing still of marijuana metabolites, such as with DOT drug testing for commercial drivers. In practice, though, the law still encourages the use of the active drug compound for testing, even if it is in one of these safety-sensitive positions or building construction trades. So for practical purposes, employers now have to focus on impairment and testing for the active compound, which we'll get into in more detail. So what's changing? Before AB 2188, policies mostly focused on a zero tolerance, meaning that employers could test for any cannabis use, and any off-duty use was grounds for either termination or disciplinary action. Even medical marijuana use was not always accommodated and under that zero tolerance policy. After 2188, the focus now shifts to impairment and non-discrimination against off-duty use. So this shifted the testing now to those tests that detect only active psychoactive compounds rather than marijuana metabolites, which are not psychoactive. Policies now became more nuanced, and medical use of marijuana now was more readily accommodated. I think it's worthwhile in talking about this to go over a little bit of science about what is considered a non-psychoactive metabolite and what is considered the psychoactive component of marijuana. most current drug tests now test for THC carboxyl, which is the main metabolite and main target of drug testing that is currently used, versus the delta-9 THC, which is the primary psychoactive compound. With the metabolites, marijuana is metabolized in the liver, and therefore metabolites may be detectable for a longer period of time, depending on frequency of use, depending on route of ingestion, whether it be smoked or ingested. But it's important to recognize that the metabolite does not indicate impairment. This metabolite is non-psychoactive and has been shown not to cause any cognitive or physical impairment. The psychoactive compound, on the other hand, the delta-9 THC, is the active and psychoactive part that causes impairment. It's a very short detection window, as when it is in the blood, it's rapidly absorbed and therefore metabolized. So the ability to detect it typically is in the 24 to 48 hour period. However, the presence is more directly linked to impairment. I think at this point, it might be interesting to relate or to discuss how this compares to, say, alcohol. Currently, we have breath alcohol testing, and that is able to, that law enforcement use, that we're able to directly link to impairment, whether it be driving or workplace. Alcohol is very water soluble. When we drink, its level in the blood and in the breath are easily measured, whether it be breath alcohol testing or blood testing. And since breath and blood are very much water, the levels in those, the breath and the blood, directly correlate with the levels in say the brain. Since when we drink and it's water soluble, it's rapidly distributed to all different body parts, including the brain, and therefore we can directly measure someone's impairment by doing a test such as a breath alcohol test. Marijuana, on the other hand, does not follow any of these rules. Marijuana is very lipid soluble or fat soluble, and is rapidly absorbed from the blood, distributed to different parts of the body at a different rate, depending on whether the marijuana is inhaled versus whether it's ingested. So since it's metabolized by the liver, the amount of metabolites that are then in the blood level don't necessarily correlate with the active component that was in the blood earlier. And there is no direct correlation between the amount in the blood and the amount that reaches the brain. So we don't have a direct linear relationship of that level. So it becomes much harder to measure and correlate that marijuana use to impairment. However, the active component of marijuana, the delta-9 THC, has been shown in numerous studies to be associated with cognitive and physical impairment. So the measuring of this active compound is the best way to determine whether there is any impairment. However, the detection window, as I mentioned, is very short. You have to catch this active compound before it is absorbed from the blood. And that's the science lesson for today. The traditional testing methods, as I mentioned, are urine testing and hair testing. The urine test detects the non-psychoactive marijuana metabolite, as does hair follicle testing. Detection times are generally days to weeks, depending on the route of the exposure, as well as to how heavily the user uses it and frequency of use. Both the urine test and the hair follicle test, since they detect only the non-psychoactive marijuana metabolites, are no longer permissible under 21. New testing methods consist of the most widely available now and becoming more available is saliva testing. And we'll talk more in detail on the saliva test in a bit. Saliva and blood tests do detect the active THC component. Because of that very short window of availability in the blood, they do show recent use within 24 to 48 hours, and it does closely align with detecting potential current impairment. Blood testing can also directly measure the active component. However, it's obviously more invasive and is typically used in severe impairment cases and accidents in the emergency room where they're drawing blood anyways, and we'll just do a blood test for the same time. Breath testing is an emerging technology, and it's possible to detect, according to initial studies, very recent use within 2 to 3 hours. However, the amount in the breath, as I mentioned, because a breath is a large component of the breath is water, the amount of actual active THC in the breath is in the picogram levels, which is very small. So it requires a very sensitive test, and therefore it's much more difficult to do accurately. However, law enforcement obviously is very interested in this technology, and it's rapidly being developed. Other technology includes impairment detection technology, which wouldn't replace saliva or blood testing, but used in conjunction. And this includes cognitive function testing, eye movement tracking, balance and coordination assessment to better objectify actual impairment rather than just testing for the mere presence of THC. To my knowledge, there is nothing commercially available yet for the impairment detection technology. So at this point, we wanted to focus on saliva testing, which is now readily available and what we are in the process of obtaining here at the clinic. And I'll let Anita discuss the saliva testing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. So, as Dr. Chan was talking, the industry and the technology hasn't quite caught up with this new regulation. And we did a lot of research when we were discussing this new law that came out on what kind of tests could we do, what would fall under the letter of the law, what would be the best, not only for, because we do test employees that work for Stanford Tri-Valley. And so what was the best test? So we did research this oral tox test. It is a swab that is used to collect saliva inside the mouth. It's processed quickly and typically takes a couple of minutes, 1 to 3 minutes. Samples can be analyzed on site. So it is a rapid device. So within, I think 15 minutes, you would know if you had a non-negative, and I'll explain what that means. And so if you have a non-negative, that is sent to the laboratory for confirmation testing. That's very important. And then it can detect THC used within the past 24 to 48 hours. Some tests can detect use within the past 4 to 6 hours. And this test has been FDA approved. We want to make sure that the science is behind it. So if you end up going to court to testify about the test, we've taken all the measures we need to make sure that it is as accurate and approved technology. Next slide. So basically the test, you take the swab and you stick it in your mouth, and the collector or nurse will sit there, and there is a indicator that says when there has been enough saliva collected. So when you reach that point, then you take it out of the individual takes it out of their mouth, and then they stick it into this container here and lock it in. And within a few minutes, you can read the test. And this test is an 8-panel test, tests for amphetamines, cocaine, marijuana, methadone, opiates, and oxycodone, and phencyclidine, and methamphetamine. So we did research and try to find an oral test that only tests for THC. We could not find that on the market as of yet. So this is the test that we found that also would allow us, if it's a non-negative, send it in for confirmation testing. We read the test. There is a control level. And so the control would need to be positive all the way across in order for the test to be valid. And then there's the testing. And so as long as you have a line everywhere under the T for test, and people are probably familiar with this, but for the antigen COVID testing, it's similar. You have a control and a test, and they both need to have lines. And so a presumptive positive would be absence. So under PCP, the presumptive positive, because there's no line there, we would then send this test into the laboratory for confirmation. And we would put it on hold. We wouldn't call it positive or negative until we got that confirmation back from the laboratory. Next slide.
And then if it is confirmed, we would also follow the same MRO and procedures that we have been doing for urine drug testing as well.
Yes. Next slide. Okay, so the advantages to saliva testing is that you don't have to collect a urine sample, which is nice. And it can be conducted easily. You don't need a restroom. You can do it right in the exam room or at the workplace. It's difficult to adulterate urine samples. People can bring things in and put it in their urine. It would be much more difficult to adulterate the saliva sample, as the collector is right there with you, and so it reduces the risk of tampering. And then detects more recent use than urine, most likely to indicate current impairment compared to urine or hair tests. And if it's all negative, right? If you get a line everywhere and it's negative, you can call it negative right then. The only time you have to send it in for confirmation testing is if you get a non-negative to confirm it through the laboratory. So that's an advantage. Next slide. Limitation is the detection window. It may not detect cannabis use beyond 48 hours. You could miss regular users who abstain briefly before the test. Concentration variability, THC concentration in saliva can vary based on an individual factors and consumption methods. And then confirmation testing, right? A positive result from a rapid test would be confirmed with laboratory analysis, and that could take several days. Next slide. All right. Reasonable suspicion testing. So, this is what a lot of our employers struggle with. And that if someone's impaired, how do they test for marijuana? What should they do now that marijuana, it's more difficult to test for? And so reasonable suspicion drug or alcohol testing is based on objective evidence of potential impairment, typically initiated by a trained supervisor. I think that's the most important thing, is that supervisors and managers should be trained on how to identify someone who may be impaired versus someone who might be having a medical issue. And so training is very important. And then testing under AB 2188 You still can do it. You have to focus on current impairment, not past use. Test should detect a current level of THC, the psychoactive portion. You need to be really good about observing behaviors and physical signs, and then the documentation is crucial if you end up in court, and training on recognizing signs of impairment, and then looking at your policies to align with AB 2188. And a lot of employers do drug testing, like for if their people are injured on the job, they'll send them in, and as part of their injury care, they'll require a drug screen. And a lot of employers still haven't removed the marijuana from the urine test. So we're working with our clients to educate them and see how they want to proceed. Next slide. So challenges, we faced these challenges at the hospital. We had to update our policies and procedures because marijuana specifically is listed in our drug screen, drug-free workplace policy. And we used to test pre-employment, and we've had to take that out of our drug. We still drug test, but we don't include marijuana. The costs of new testing methods, the oral tox test, the initial test is not too expensive, but the lab does charge per analyte that you want to confirm, so it can be more expensive than urine testing. And then, always balancing safety concerns with employee rights, impairment detection challenges. It can be hard for supervisors to confront someone or to discuss, hey, you look like, you're not doing well today, or whatever it is. That's always difficult. And so training is key, training and education. And so that your supervisors and managers feel comfortable bringing that up if there's an issue. Next slide.
So I think some of as Anita mentioned, the key takeaway here is that there's a significant change in how employers approach cannabis use. One of the biggest changes, I think, is in the pre-employment testing. And we struggle with that here at the hospital in terms of how we balance that off-duty use versus current impairment. And whether when we do a pre-employment exam, are they currently an employee yet, or are they not an employee? So it really shifts the focus more on reasonable suspicion testing and testing for those safety sensitive positions. Employers really have to look at their current policies and make appropriate changes. And that includes also training. And I think that's a big one and to make sure they're in compliant with the 2188. And then the main thing is the testing now to detect the active component rather than the non-psychoactive metabolite. So at our clinic, we are trying to work with our existing clients to educate them on the current changes in the drug testing. As Anita mentioned, if we see a drug test that is still done under their old protocol, we will be proactive and try to address that with them. These are a range of other services that we can provide to employers and our clients. One of the newest services that we're offering is I'm really excited about is our ergonomic services, and I'll let Anita tell you a little bit about that.
Great. We have a new service that we're adding in September, next week, actually. We have onboarded a trained occupational therapist with a specialty in ergonomics, and she will be available to go out. I know that a lot of employers struggle with ergonomics and setting up workspaces that help reduce repetitive motion injuries. And so Denise will be available for any kind of ergonomic evaluations, to come on site to do training. And so we're really excited to have Denise on board. And if anyone is interested in the services that Denise can provide, please don't hesitate to either call me or email Denise, and we're happy to talk about what she can provide to the companies, to your company.
So that was our overview on 2188. We're happy to take any questions or expand on any of the things we talked about. But thank you again for having us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Dr. Chan and Miss Anita. I don't see any questions in the chat. Does anybody have any that they'd like to ask verbally? What is the best, I mean, tell me about this. I'll ask the question is, does an employer have these tests in-house, or do they send an employee down to you for these tests?
They usually send them to us. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we have trained, so all of our staff is specially trained to properly follow a chain of custody and proper testing procedures so that there are no errors or no questions related to the actual collection of the test or the send out. So I think some employers may do some things on site, but I think most of them would send them to us, these individuals to us. One, if they feel like someone's impaired, they may want Dr. Chan to do an evaluation, to do a medical evaluation on the impairment, and then possibly move forward with a drug test.
Part of the challenge of doing it on site for them is the test doesn't give you a positive, it gives you a presumptive positive. So it still has to be sent out for confirmation currently. So I think to act upon a presumptive positive is risky. And I think having it done in the clinic would be much better.
I have a question. How aware are employers? Do they know about this change? I mean, are you seeing a lot that come in and have no idea things have changed, or is it, pretty common knowledge out there at this point?
I think it's kind of 50-50. We have had employers call us about the law and have asked us to remove the marijuana test from their urine test, because a lot of employers still do urine drug screen testing for pre-employment or post-accident. And so quite a few have called us, and we do have a urine test that is available that does not include a marijuana. But we do have clients that have no idea that this law went into effect. And so we try to help them and give them the information so they can make a good informed decision on how they'll move forward if they have a positive marijuana test.
I think most of the employers that are aware of it are mainly just removing it from their pre-employment exam requirements and not even testing for marijuana. Where I think a lot of them are not addressing it is in the post-injury drug testing, where and in reasonable suspicion. And I think that's where, for example, with work injuries, if they do a drug test before, if they came positive for marijuana, they could deny the claim, and they could also take disciplinary action against the employee. You can't do that at the present time by testing for marijuana metabolites. So they would have to change their focus, and even if they did test for the impairment, they would have to document that it was the cause of the injury. So it becomes a lot more complicated in terms of post-injury testing and reasonable suspicion testing.
Thank you.
Is that similar to, say, an alcohol impairment or other drug impairment?
Yeah, I think it becomes much more similar to alcohol impairment, whereas if there's reasonable suspicion, say for someone that's intoxicated at work, they know to document that very well and to bring them into the clinic where we would test them immediately to get a breath alcohol level. So in many ways, it's very similar to that. I don't know of any employer that does a breath alcohol test for pre-employment, and which would make a lot of sense. So yes, in that regards, I think it is very much like the breath alcohol.
Does anybody else have any questions? Nothing in the chat. Okay, is there anything else that you'd like to share with us about what's going on with Stanford in the Tri-Valley?
You're on mute, Anita.
I know, I'm sorry, I was having trouble getting
I
off
threw that
mute.
one out at you.
I think, you know, we're available for any kind of questions. We do provide some on-site evaluations. Dr. Chan is always willing to go to a work site to evaluate, you know, any safety issues or just tour the department. We do obviously injury care, new hire physicals. We do you know, a lot of the cities, we do police officer physicals, firefighter physicals. And so if anyone's interested in any of our services, we do help companies manage their injury care. We're happy and available for any kind of questions. If you want to come down and tour the clinic, we'd be happy to have you. And then again, we're very excited about our ergonomic specialist, Denise, who's starting next week. And so if you're interested in any of her services, please let us know.
I think specifically with AB 2188, if any employer needs assistance with determining impairment or helping with their policy or training with regards to that, we're available for that as well. So yeah.
And what's the best way for someone to reach out to your department?
You can email me. I think my email is on the flyer there, or give us a call. I can post, yeah, there you go. This is our main phone number at the top, and then there's my phone number and my email.
Okay, I'm going to screenshot this. Thank you. And then what else? Is there a fee for you to use your services, or do you need a contract to send someone down?
No contract is necessary. There is a fee for the ergonomist, obviously, to come on site to do any kind of evaluation or training. But there's no fee for us to go on site. If you're a current client of ours and you want us to do a site visit, we're happy to do that. There are fees, obviously, if you're interested in a physical or to set up the saliva testing. We can talk about prices. If you give us a call, we can go over all of your interests and needs.
Okay, so there's no contract, but you said if you're a client of ours, how do you become a client?
You give us a call, we set up a protocol on specific needs of the company. So we individualize all of our care and all of our programs. So we meet with the leadership of the company and actually set up contact information, what type of services they need, how they want to be billed, contact information. So we build all of that. All you need to do is just give us a call and we can set that up.
Awesome. Well, I hope that's helpful to everybody, and I hope this helps you with your hiring needs as well as post-injury issues that you may have with your team. And thank you, Stanford HealthCare Tri-Valley, for sponsoring these educational seminars throughout the year with the Tri-Valley Chamber Alliance. We appreciate that, and we love and look forward to learning about what you guys have to share with our community, because it's so very important, and our community is really lucky to have outstanding healthcare in the Tri-Valley. So anyway, thank you on behalf of the Tri-Valley Chamber Alliance and the Dublin Chamber. Thank you, Dr. Chan, for coming back again and sharing your expertise with us, as well as Anita. It was very nice to meet you, and thank you for your insight. And I hope you get a few calls from some of the businesses here in the Tri-Valley.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great.
And I
Thank you
hope
for having us.
everybody has a great
Thank
day
you.
and a happy Labor Day.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.